What is going on YouTube? Joe here with Color Nation Media and welcome back to another episode of CM Strats. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Salamence set that you guys have seen me run very recently. I used to run a dragon dancing set and I still do run it sometimes because it's a lot of fun with Moxie and all that stuff. But today we're going to be taking a look at defensive Salamence, and of course I shouldn't have to mention this, but it is OU. I don't know, have I done any OU Pokemon yet? No, I did Scizor. So I'm trying to bounce around as far as the tiers are concerned. I don't want to use just all, or not use, I don't want to just talk about only NU Pokemon, even though that is one of my favorite tiers and I always appreciate the lower tiered Pokemon more. This is an interesting way to spin Salamence. And I've seen this set. I don't know if it was the exact set, but something similar. Some other YouTubers have used something similar to this. I just kind of put my own spin on it. Actually, it may be the same exact set. I don't know. I don't by any means say that everything that I run is completely original. Somebody else can think of the same thing that I have, even if I don't know who they are, or you know what I'm talking about. Basically, I'm not the only person in existence to ever think of this idea. That's what I wanted to say. Now, before we get started today, before I just break down what this set does and some partners and various other things, if you haven't done so already and you would like to show some support to the channel and the series, which I hope you guys do because I do appreciate it, all you got to do is click that thumbs up button right below this video. It really does help out a lot. It really does. And also, I always encourage you guys to leave a comment. Tell me what your thoughts are. Give me some feedback. Give me some, constructive criticism. Keyword constructive there, nothing negative. I mean, you can have a negative opinion, just do it in a constructive way. That's all that I ask. I do read every comment. I do try to respond to as many people as possible so that your voices are heard. You feel like I'm trying to listen to you guys and take what you say seriously and take it into account when I make these videos. Now let's take a look at this set. Let's jump into this. We've got an impish nature. First of all, before I mention anything, I should say this is a physically defensive set because of the typing. I feel like Salamence can take physical hits a little bit better, and also because of Intimidate. You could run a mixed wall, have it be specially defensive, but it's already not taking things like an Ice Beam, and most Water-type Pokemon carry Ice Beam anyway, even though you resist the Water-type stab, so that is a thing. But yeah, so we're running physically defensive. That's why I chose the nature Impish, which is a positive defense minus special attack, because we only have one attacking move on the sets, and it is a physical move, so that is that. So the EVs are pretty straightforward, 248 HP, because we are running the Defog on this set, so we are going to be switching into hazards. And it does do 25% to Salamence, which is unfortunate, not something that's always ideal for a wall. But it's also not the end of the world. A lot of successful defensive Pokemon can be weak to hazards, such as Arcanine, such as Salamence even. Noctowl is another one that I've gone over myself. Being weak to rocks is not the end of the world, especially if you have Defog and a healing move. So the 248 HP is just to make sure you can switch into Stealth Rock a little bit easier, or more times rather, I guess not easier, but more times to get the Defog off. Then we have our defense maxed out because we're physically defensive, so that's what we're gonna do. And then the 8 leftover EVs can go into anything. You can throw it into special defense if you want, you can throw it into attack if you want Dragon Tail to do a little bit more damage, or you could throw it into speed, which is what I did, so that you can outspeed certain Pokemon. And by certain Pokemon, I mean Salamence is base 100 speed, so if you come up against something else that's base 100 speed and only has 4 EVs and it's uninvested otherwise, you're going to outspeed it. And I know Dragon Tail has minus priority, but sometimes getting a Roost off is, very important, or getting a Wish up if, it's like a last-ditch effort to pass off a Wish as you go down. Sometimes outspeeding a Pokemon is good, so I just threw it there. It's not that practical, but it's also only 8 EVs, so it's not that important either way. Now, as for the item, I usually use leftovers on mine, but you can also opt to use the Rocky Helmet, which does work just as well because you're a physical wall, and things like Close Combat and Mach Punch and Drain Punch, any physical move that makes contact, most of them are not going to be doing anything to Salamence at all, especially especially after the Intimidate, and there are a lot of cases where if you switch in on something like a Mach Punch, you're dealing more damage to your opponent than they're dealing to you. So the Rocky Helmet does come into play there, and you have reliable recovery in Roost and Wish, which we will go over. So it's not like you're missing out that much. But at the same time, the passive recovery from lefties is beneficial and allows you to not use Roost and Wish as much sometimes. So it just depends on how you want to play it and what works well on your team, how you want to use the Salamence, what you want it to counter, those kinds of things. The ability, you have two choices. You've got either Moxie or Intimidate. It's a defensive set, so Intimidate is a no-brainer. Moxie is only used for offensive sets. It works very, very well, but there's no place for it on this set. Intimidate is way, way too useful. So let's take a look at the moves here. We've got Dragon Tail, which is going to be the main move that you're going to use. So you're not going to have any Pokemon setting up on you. It's just not happening. It will allow you to rack up entry hazard damage and really make it difficult for your opponent to get the right Pokemon out on this Salamence unless they happen to get Dragon Tailed out into that Pokemon. So that is the main move. You also get Stab on it. It's unfortunately minus priority because Salamence surprisingly does outspeed quite a few things with its base 100 speed stat, even though it's not invested. But the Dragon Tail is just so good. So good. We do pack the Defog, so we're going to be getting rid of any spikes or toxic spikes or sticky webs, which we fly over all of those, so we're not affected by them, which is great. The only thing we are affected by is the Stealth Rocks, which does do 25% due to our flying typing, but it generally isn't that big of a deal with all of our recovery options. And also our 248 invested HP, so that is the thing. So it's a good way to support your team. So anything that appreciates hazards being removed, such as Charizard, any flying type, basically Talonflame, things like that, they make great partners, and I'll go over that a little bit later. Also, then we have the recovery, and it seems a little bit redundant to run Wish and Roost on the same set. A bunch of people have asked me in the videos that the Salamence was used, why on earth do you have two recovery moves? It's like running Roost and Recover. Except that it's not, because Wish can be passed off to other Pokemon in your party. Salamence does have a decent HP stat, and if you're invested as much as we are at level 50, I'm pretty sure it's over 200. So you're passing 100-something HP at level 50 off to something that is kind of crazy good. So you can throw up a Wish and then, you know, pass that out to something, and it kind of eases your ability to switch into sweepers or checks for certain Pokemon, because even though you take damage, you can heal it off. So that's fantastic. Also, if Salamence is about to go down, you can throw up a Wish, and then when your other Pokemon comes in, you can basically get a free turn of setup or whatever you want to do, because you're just going to get all that HP back anyway. Or you can just get off a free attack, or whatever you want to do. The options are endless. Okay, not endless, but almost endless. Okay, probably not almost endless either, but there are a lot of options. That's what I'm trying to say. So if you don't want to go that route and you feel like that's just a waste, or you don't think that, you know, that fits your playstyle, which is perfectly fine. That's just how I play. That doesn't work for everybody. That's not how everybody wants to play. So if you wanted to use this set and just, you're like, why do I have to have two recovery moves? That's just stupid, and I'm never going to use it like that. So you could throw Toxic on there if you really wanted to. That's a great way to deal some passive damage. It does work well with Dragon Tail, because you can start spreading some Toxics around. And if your opponent doesn't have a Cleric on their team, or their Cleric is dead, and, you know, no more Heal Bell or Aromatherapy users, having a lot of things Toxic is not so good. Not so good at all. So Toxic is perfectly viable. You could run, I guess, EQ if you wanted to be able to hit fairies for at least some damage, to be able to hit some steel types for some damage. I personally don't feel like that's worth it, because you're not invested in attack, but it is an option. It is definitely an option. So other than that, I really don't have any other options that I want to go over. Toxic and EQ are definitely the go-to alternatives. Now, we can go ahead and start talking about some possible partners and team building strategies when you want to use this Salamence on your team. Obviously, you have to use it in OU because it is BL. So yeah. First things first, having something on your team that can set up hazards works very, very well with this, because you've got a shuffling or phasing move in Dragon Tail, and that, like I said, is your main way of dealing damage. And in some cases, the residual damage that your passive damage that you're racking up from Dragon Tailing out is more than Dragon Tail's actually doing directly to your opponent. So having Pokemon like Tyranitar, Skarmory, Mamoswine, or Ferrothorn, all of these can be used in OU. They're perfectly viable OU Pokemon. They make great partners for Salamence because they can set up rocks, or in Skarmory and Ferrothorn's case, they can set up spikes and or rocks, which is fantastic because not only does Salamence force a lot of switches because they think that it's going to be offensive, even if they see the Intimidate, a lot of times they can still think that it could be offensive. That's what it's used for most of the time. Then you pull out a Dragon Tail. If you've got 3 layers of spikes up, you got 2 Pokemon already that have 25% done to them. And if you have rocks up as well, it's not going to be a good time for your opponent. So definitely having entry hazards up, or having that support on your team with Salamence, is a good idea for this set. Also, Pokemon that don't like hazards being up on your side of the field are great partners for Salamence, because Salamence can support them with Defog. In OU specifically, I'm talking about Charizard. Doesn't matter which Mega, because both of them don't like Stealth Rocks, and if it's not Mega Evolved, obviously Charizard's taking 50% from that, and that's not so much fun. Talonflame is another one that's 4 times weak to Rocks. Pinsir is 4 times weak after it Mega Evolves. It's still just 2 times weak before that, so it's still taking 25% even if it hasn't Mega Evolved yet. Then we got Dragonite, which is weak to rocks, and especially doesn't like them because it's got that multi-scale that it wants to keep intact as much as possible. So I know it's kind of strange to run Salamence and Dragonite on the same team because of the same typing, but dual dragons, Dragon is such a great typing. I know it got nerfed a little bit, or not really nerfed, but it suffers a little bit from the addition of the Fairy type. But still fantastic typing. It has a lot of resistances, and you get some added resistances with the flying typing, you know, the resistance to fighting, immunity to ground, that kind of thing. But having dual dragons is not a bad strategy at all. And surprisingly, they synergize well together, as weird as that sounds. And then, outside of a specific Pokemon, any Pokemon that has a Focus Sash or Sturdy really appreciates Defog support as well, because if hazards are up and they come in, their Sturdy/Focus Sash is broken, and that just defeats the whole purpose of their item. Most of the time, if they're running Focus Sash or Sturdy, they don't have any kind of recovery. Usually. It's not in every case, you know, something like Greninja that likes to carry Focus Sash quite often makes for a good partner with Salamence, because Salamence can support it. One other thing, and really the only other main point that I wanted to make, is you need to have something that can take care of fairies. You really do, because if you run this Salamence the way I have it here, you can't touch fairies at all, and as soon as the fairy type comes in, you're kind of screwed. All you can do is Defog or Roost Up or Pass a Wish or something. You can't continue to Dragon Tail, and until that fairy type is dead, this Salamence is not nearly as useful. That's why I did say that EQ could be an option, but if you're uninvested, Pokemon like physically defensive Sylveon with Evolved Nature and all that stuff, which is fairly common, you're not going to be doing enough damage to have it really be worth it. Toxic could be an option to try to wear them down, but there are Steel types everywhere too, especially in OU. So it just depends on what the rest of the team can do. If you have something that can counter fairies, then I would just leave the set the way it is and go from there. But Pokemon that can take out fairies fairly reliably, we've got Bisharp, Ferrothorn, Excadrill, Heatran, Scizor, and Venusaur, all of which make fantastic partners for Salamence. Bisharp obviously usually runs the Swords Dance sets. Unfortunately, Sucker Punch doesn't do a whole lot, but Iron Head destroys most fairies. Ferrothorn kind of poops on most fairies as well, because Bisharp doesn't actually resist fairy-type attacks. Ferrothorn does, and Gyro Ball will kill most of them. Azumarill, probably not so much, but if you're running Power Whip or you can Leech Seed it or something, Azumarill can't do much to you anyway, just gets destroyed by the Iron Barbs and Rocky Helmet combo. Excadrill, if you're running Iron Head, not all of them do, because it's not the best coverage in the world, but a lot of them run the Iron Head just for fairy types. And yeah, with the Swords Dance up or something, you're going to wreck things like Sylveon or Florges or whatever that's trying to come in. Heatran is huge in OU. Everybody likes to use Heatran. It's got a bunch of different uses. Defensive Heatran is a big thing. Toxic stalling Heatran, unfortunately, is becoming more of a thing. Sub-Toxic Protect shenanigans. I don't suggest using that set, but they can run Flash Cannon as a, Steel-type stab. It does hurt fairies reliably well, and you're 4 times resistant to fairy type attacks, so even if you don't have a steel type move, you can switch in on any fairy type attack aimed at Salamence fairly well. Scizor, very similar. Mega Scizor even has really good bulk. It has reliable recovery in Roost, and even if you're running a Choice Banded, most fairies are going to run in fear the minute Scizor hits the field, because Bullet Punch is a problem for them regardless. And then lastly, what I mentioned was Venusaur. Either just by itself or Mega Venusaur. Mega Venusaur is so bulky, and Sludge Bomb just destroys just about every fairy. Let's be real here. Mega Venusaur hard counters a lot of fairies, and even things like Azumarill. Azumarill can't really touch Mega Venusaur at all. So Mega Venusaur, again, is a fantastic partner for this Salamence. And also, Mega Venusaur also is kind of afraid of things like Talonflame, and Salamence can switch in on Talonflame, believe it or not. With all that defense investment, get that Intimidate off, and whether you have the Rocky Helmet or whatever, Talonflame's not going to match up very well at all. So with that being said, that's pretty much all I wanted to go over. I feel like I went pretty in-depth there. I think I touched on all the points I wanted to. I'm sure I forgot something. I don't know what that is at this point. I'll probably figure it out as soon as I hit the stop record button. But yeah, so if you guys have any questions for me, feel free to either hit me up on Twitter or write it in the comment section below. You can also suggest any kind of Pokemon that you would like to see featured in these videos in the future. If you have a specific set of mine that you would like to see me go over in this fashion in a video like this, feel free to suggest that wherever you want. I try to get back to everybody. It's getting increasingly it's getting increasingly difficult because it seems like there are so many more of you as the days go by, but I'm still doing my best to keep up with everybody's comments and suggestions and requests and all that stuff. So with that being said, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you're leaving a like rating and a comment, because it does help me out a lot, and I will see you all for the next episode. But until then, game on.